Hello and welcome to yet another edition of World Panorama. All the biggest international news stories that made headlines this week coming up in the next 30 minutes. I'm Ashwarya Kapoor with you. Let's begin the program with the headlines. Mueller concludes a Russia-Trump probe with no new indictments, submits a confidential report to Attorney General William Barr. Barr's summary says report did not find Trump campaign conspired with Russia. UK lawmakers reject Theresa May's Brexit deal for a third time. Outcome increases the chances of lengthy Brexit delay or Britain leaving European Union without a deal by 12th of April deadline. US President Donald Trump officially recognizes Israeli sovereignty over occupied Golan Heights seized from Syria in 1967. Israeli Prime Minister calls it historic. US isolated at United Nations over the move. Syrian forces declare Islamic State defeated at last enclave. Donald Trump hails fall of Islamic State's caliphate but warns the terror group remains a threat. And calls grow in Algeria for President Bouteflika to be ousted. Coalition ally of Algeria's ruling party calls for ailing president to resign. The army chief also demands Bouteflika be declared unfit for office after weeks of popular protests against him. The top story this week, US Special Counsel Robert Mueller closed his long and contentious Russia investigation with no new charges, ending the probe that had cast a dark shadow over Donald Trump's presidency. Mueller submitted the confidential report to Attorney General William Barr. And according to a letter delivered to Congress by Barr, Mueller found that neither Donald Trump nor any of his aides colluded with Russia during the 2016 election. However, the report has launched a fresh wave of political battles over the still confidential findings, with Democrats demanding that the report be quickly released to the public and Republicans saying that it ended as 2 years of wasted time and money. It is one of the biggest victories of the Donald Trump's presidency. No collusion, no obstruction, just as Trump had vowed. The summary of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report said that US President Donald Trump's campaign did not conspire with Russia during the 2016 election. The allegation had clouded the first 2 years of Trump's presidency. Trump claimed complete and total exoneration.
After 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead. The collusion delusion is over. The special counsel completed its report and found no collusion and no obstruction. I could have told you that 2.5 years ago very easily. Total exoneration, complete vindication.
The conclusion was reached by Mueller after more than 2,800 subpoenas, nearly 500 search warrants, and a similar number of witness interviews. However, Mueller's verdict was not nearly as definitive as the president and his allies would claim. Mueller did not clear Donald Trump of obstruction of justice.
I think his bottom line conclusion is that it wasn't an indication that prosecution was warranted, and it wasn't an exoneration either. I think there are some significant issues that the Attorney General rightly recognized.
The report details Mueller's findings from a 2-year investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, possible coordination by the campaign of Trump in that meddling, and possible obstruction of justice by the president. Mueller's report was submitted to Attorney General William Barr, who then submitted a 4-page summary of the report to the Congress. However, Democrats have demanded to see Mueller's full report and the underlying evidence, with indications that Mueller's final report is more than 300 pages long. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says summarizing the report's findings in 4 pages was condescending and arrogant. Last month, the House of Representatives voted 420 to 0 to release Mueller's report. However, Senate blocked the attempt for the report's release, with U.S. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying that Mueller report contains sensitive and, in some instances, classified material.
The Attorney General, in consulting with the special counsel, believes it is important to protect sensitive sources and methods, protect material that could affect ongoing investigations and prosecutions, and is legally protected. Then he deserves the time to work through these issues.
The outcome of Mueller's investigation was as disappointing for Democrats as it was buoying for Republicans. For nearly 2 years, the fate of Trump presidency has been bound up in a rare legal limbo. And with Mueller's investigation now largely behind him, President Donald Trump is turning his attention to the next election. In the end, Mueller's report may have been a boon for U.S. democracy. The power to render a verdict on the Trump presidency has been rendered to American voters. The final report will come at the ballot box on 3rd of November 2020. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. News from Britain now, where UK lawmakers rejected Theresa May's Brexit deal for a 3rd time on Friday, plunging the country further into political uncertainty. The defeat of the Prime Minister's withdrawal agreement by 344 votes to 286 came on the same day that Britain was originally supposed to leave the European Union and left the path forward on Brexit unclear. The rejection of May's plan raises the chances of a lengthy delay to Brexit, or Britain crashing out of the European Union without a deal on the new deadline of 12th of April. May had offered to resign if Parliament passed her deal, but ultimately she was unable to persuade enough MPs to back a plan that they had resoundingly rejected in 2 previous votes. The Prime Minister said that the outcome was a matter of profound regret. It may now rest on British lawmakers to find a way out of the impasse when they run a second vote on alternatives to May's deal on Monday. Meanwhile, responding to the vote, European Council President Donald Tusk has called a European Council meet on 10th of April. In a statement, the European Commission said that the UK would have to indicate a way forward by 12th of April for consideration by the European Council.
Mr. Speaker, I think it should be a matter of profound regret to every member of this House that once again we have been unable to support leaving the European Union in an orderly fashion. The implications of the House's decision are grave. The legal default now is that the United Kingdom is due to leave the European Union on the 12th of April, in just 14 days' time. That is not enough time to agree, legislate for and ratify a deal, and yet the House has been clear it will not permit leaving without a deal. And so we will have to agree an alternative way forward.
And US President Donald Trump has officially recognized Israeli sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights. Donald Trump's move upends a half-century of US policy, and his move has been hailed as historic by Israeli Prime Minister. The strategically important plateau has been widely considered under international law to be occupied territory since Israel seized it from Syria in 1967. In his proclamation, Donald Trump cited security needs as paramount, though in practice, Israeli control has not been challenged for decades. it is one of the most conflict-prone places on earth. Golan Heights, a focus of global dispute since Israel seized it from Syria in the 1967 Middle East War. The international community has never accepted Israel's claim to the territory, but things changed recently. First declaring in a tweet, and then US President Donald Trump officially recognized Israeli sovereignty there in a ceremony in Washington alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
It was a great honor to be on Israeli soil and to celebrate with Prime Minister Netanyahu at the very moment President Trump boldly recognized the Golan Heights for what it is, a part of Israel.
Donald Trump's announcement is a major shift in American policy and gives Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a political boost a month before elections. He thanked Trump for the move. However, Syria condemned Trump's action and said it will lead to America's isolation, adding that Trump's stance won't change the fact that Golan Heights was and will remain Arab and Syrian.
He recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and he did so at a time when Iran is trying to use Syria as a platform to attack and destroy Israel. And the message that President Trump has given the world is that America stands by Israel.
Trump's decision to recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights was rejected by the United Nations.
Our position in relation to the Golan Heights is very clear. It comes clearly established by the resolutions of the Security Council and the General Assembly.
Many nations also condemned it, saying that the move contravened international law. In fact, isolation of the US over the matter was clearly seen at United Nations Security Council emergency meet that was requested by Syria. In the meeting, Syria described the US decision as a flagrant violation of Security Council resolutions.
تدين بلادي الجمهورية العربية السورية الإعلان غير الشرعي الصادر عن رئيس الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بتاريخ 25 آذار مارس الجاري بخصوص الوضع القانوني للجولان العربي السوري المحتل. وتعتبر حكومة بلادي تلك الورقة التي وقعها الرئيس ترامب في ذلك اليوم.
Located in the southwest tip of Syria, the Golan Heights covers about 1,800 square kilometers with about two-thirds under Israel's control. More than 40,000 people live in the Golan. About half were residents before the 1967 war or are their descendants, a majority of them members of the Druze faith, including many who have refused Israeli citizenship. The other half are Jewish settlers who have moved in since Israel captured the territory. The Golan shares a border with Lebanon, Jordan and Israel. Israel's possession of the territory gives its military a clear view of southern Syria all the way to the capital, Damascus. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. In World Panorama, we'll take a very short break. More international news that made headlines this week. Coming up ahead, stay tuned. Islamic State fighters have been defeated at their final shred of territory that they had held in eastern Syria, marking the end of jihadist rule that once spanned a third of Iraq and Syria. The US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF, proclaimed the capture of Islamic State's last territory of Baghouz. However, the fall of Islamic State has led to new challenges, including a threat from sleeper cells around the world. Damaged buildings, abandoned tents in the village of Baghouz in Syria, showing capture of Islamic State terrorist group's last territory. US-backed forces proclaimed the capture last week.
eliminating Islamic State's rule over a self-proclaimed caliphate.
Delivers a crushing strategic blow and underscores the unwavering commitment of our local partners and the global coalition to defeat ISIS.
Originally an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, Islamic State took large swathes of Syria and Iraq from 2014, imposing a reign of terror with public beheadings and attacks by supporters abroad. But it was eventually beaten back to the village of Baghouz. Syrian Democratic Forces fighters besieged Baghouz while US planes pounded from above.
نؤكد بأن حربنا ضد إرهاب داعش ستستمر حتى تحقيق النصر الكامل والقضاء على وجوده بشكل كلي.
However, the eradication of Islamic State has thrown up new challenges. First, there is question of what to do with the thousands of terrorists who emerged from the last IS enclave of Baghouz, particularly after countries have refused to bring home their detained nationals. The Syrian fighters say that an international tribunal must be built that will prosecute those who have been rounded up in the nearly 5-year campaign against the extremist group. Also, what about the jihadists who have not been captured? Some of them still hold out in Syria's remote central desert and in Iraqi cities.
Our mission there hasn't changed. We still have work to do to make sure that radical Islamic terrorism doesn't continue to grow.
And despite the success in removing Islamic State, the victory may now bring to light some of the opposing standpoints between the Kurdish forces and the Syrian government. Kurds are the local people who have been at the forefront of the fight against Islamic State, fighting under the banner of Syrian Democratic Forces alongside several local Arab militias, and helped by the US-led coalition air power. The Kurdish-led administration has asked the government to grant it autonomy in a new constitution, something Damascus has roundly rejected.
Let's say US backing is not enough to have a country. So for me, I think that Kurds, they will begin to negotiate with Damascus, with Syrian government, and try to get some rights of non-central administration.
At its height, Islamic State controlled 88,000 square kilometers across Syria and Iraq. While it no longer holds this territory, US officials believe Islamic State may have 15,000 to 20,000 armed adherents active in the region, many of them in sleeper cells, and that it will return to its insurgent roots while attempting to rebuild. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Let's get to some more international news in Global Buzz. The United Nations Security Council unanimously adopted on Thursday a resolution aimed at strengthening global efforts to combat ways that terrorist groups raise their funds to finance their operations. The French drafted a resolution orders all countries to ensure that their domestic laws are sufficient to prosecute and penalize those responsible for directly or indirectly financing terrorist organizations or individual terrorists for any purpose. It also demands that 193 member states ensure that all measures they take to combat terrorism and its financing comply with the international humanitarian, human rights and refugee laws. India has called the United Nations measure a milestone. Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido will be barred from holding further public office for 15 years, the maximum allowed by law, the state financial controller has announced. Controller Elvis Amoroso said that Guaido's personal financial statements contained inconsistencies. However, Guaido has rejected the announcement, saying that he was not Auditor General. Guaido, head of opposition-controlled National Assembly, declared himself as interim president in the month of January. He has the support of more than 50 countries, including the United States. Mozambique President Filipe Nyusi has said that the country was facing one of the biggest natural disasters in its history. This after Cyclone Idai ravaged vast areas of the country 2 weeks ago. Thousands of people were trapped for more than a week in submerged villages without any access to clean water. Cyclone Idai smashed into the Mozambique port city of Beira on 14th of March, causing catastrophic flooding and killing more than 700 people across 3 countries of Mozambique, Zimbabwe and Malawi in Southeast Africa. On to the other top story this week. After weeks of street protests, Algeria's army chief of staff has demanded that the country's president, Bouteflika, be declared unfit to rule. The chief of staff, General Ahmed Salah, is one of the top power brokers in the regime. He had until recently been very loyal to the president. He, however, threw his weight behind what he called were the legitimate demands of the demonstrators in a speech that was broadcast on the television. The general speech marked a second victory for the Algerian street protesters in less than 3 weeks. Previously, they had forced President Bouteflika to withdraw his candidacy in the presidential elections, which he also cancelled. Thousands of students are rallying in Algiers, calling on President Abdulaziz Bouteflika to quit. This is one of the several protests organized in the recent weeks against the 82-year-old leader who has been in power for the last 20 years.
تغيير نظام، تغيير جذري، ماناش حابين تغيير عناصر، انا حابين يكون تغيير وانا حابين يعيشوا لاجينا ناسيس وماش حابين يكونوا ما يحرقوش.
Protests against Bouteflika began last month after he said that he planned to stand for another term. However, after the protest, the president agreed not to stand for a 5th term in the upcoming elections, which have been delayed. But people have continued to march even after he agreed not to stand, instead demanding immediate change.
On manifestait contre la prolongation du 4e mandat. On veut un changement radical. C'est tout.
Meanwhile, Algeria's army chief of staff has now demanded that President Bouteflika be declared unfit to rule after weeks of protests against him. Lieutenant General Gaid Salah is also the deputy defense minister and he was seen as president's loyalist. But he has now given his support to the demonstrators.
الجزائري وهو الحل الذي يضمن احترام أحكام الدستور واستمرارية سيادة الدولة، حل من شأنه تحقيق توافق الرؤى الجميع ويكون مقبولا.
The army chief's call now needs to be backed by the country's constitutional council. It must first agree to trigger Article 102 of the Constitution. Both chambers of parliament would then meet in a joint session and vote on whether the president is unfit to perform his duties. A 2/3 majority is required. If this passes, the Speaker of the Upper House of Parliament would take over the duties of the president. The new provisional head of state would rule for 45 days with a specific mission to prepare for new presidential elections.
ما نحبسوش هنا، نبقاو ديما مع الحراك، نبقاو ديما نراقبوا حتى وين نوصلوا للمبتغى نتاعنا وهو تغيير النظام، وكما يقال الأخ اللي فات يروحوا كاع إن شاء الله.
A veteran of Algeria's War of Independence, Bouteflika came into office backed by the army after the 1990s civil war and was largely viewed as a unifier of many factions underpinning Algerian politics. His presidency survived the protests of the Arab Spring in 2011 as well, until now. Demonstrators are now demanding that he should go and there should be an end to the corrupt nexus of politics, money and brute force. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And finally, if you travel to the end of the world and back, it is always good to have a friend by your side. For Dada Compostrini and his friend Poco the dog, a short motorcycle trip has turned into a real road adventure. The two are traveling together to the southern tip of Southern America with no end to the journey in sight. The two arrived in Punta Arenas in Chile after traveling south through Argentina and the entirety of Patagonia. And next, they plan to drive to Chile's Austral Highway and thousands of more kilometers before heading home. So take a look at this adventurous duo as I take your leave. I'll see you next week with another edition of World Panorama. Bye-bye.